Hello, and welcome to my presentation of my final. So, today I have gotten out of my hole in the middle of nowhere and have been wanting to disappear, but the more I want to disappear, the more they bring me back in. So, now I'm here, and I'm going to discuss three of the pieces that I would love to do in the future sometime. A program that actually could be done, but we will see. But so I'll be talking about Morton Gould's Benny's Gig, 8 duos for B flat clarinet and double bass. Astor Piazzolla's The Four Seasons of Buenos Aires and Beethoven's Septet in E flat major. And so start off with the Gould. So Gould is the most prolific, one of the most prolific American composers of our time. He's defined the genre. He's up there with Copland. He's not as famous as Copland, but he's up there, and he really did his due diligence in pushing forth the American style and putting us on the map against the Europeans per se and others. And so he was born in 1913 to an Austrian father and a Russian mother in New York City. And he showed a lot of promise and was considered a child prodigy. And so he studied with Vincent White when he was younger at New York University in the composition class, and he also took piano lessons. But he did a lot of vaudeville, dance company theater, dance theater, excuse me, and jazz, of course. Well, why would he not do jazz? And so he he was influenced by the different styles because New York is a hodgepodge of everything known to man. I mean, you can have Jamaicans in one block, and then the next block is the Italians, and uh, you know, God help us, the Irish on the next block, that sort of thing. But it's a hodgepodge, and he was influenced directly by doing a lot of the gigs and just hearing the music around. And so during the Depression, he went to what is now called the Juilliard School. You may have heard of them, and he was there in their very humble beginnings. And so he studied, but the most important work that he did was just the work as a pianist around. And so he says that the vaudeville shows really exposed him to a lot and really opened his mind to the styles of music around and ultimately influenced him to add folk songs and spirituals to his repertoire of composition. And so he's done many orchestral works and many film scores like the Holocaust and Verdun, and then another one, the Cowboy Rhapsody, the choral and fugue in jazz for two pianos and orchestra, that sort of thing. His chamber works, he didn't write very many chamber works, but the ones that he did write were in their own right great. And so this one, Benny's Gig, he wrote it for Benny Goodman, of course. He wrote it for his 1962 Russian tour sponsored by the U.S. State Department. And so originally, this was 7 movements. And these 7 movements were a hodgepodge of Benny Goodman's swing era. And so a lot of his tunes are in there. Gould has incorporated them into his own writing, and then his own flair, his own Gould flair, if I can speak properly. And so on Benny's Goodman's 70th birthday in 1979, he added the 8th movement, which is nicknamed Calypso, and it's based off of a Caribbean folk song, folk style, and it's a playful allusion to "On the Sunny Side of the Street" by one of Goodman's famous arrangements. And so that for bass and clarinet adds some good duo flair and a lot of contemporary, a lot of 20th century flair to it, and it's a wonderful piece to play and listen to. So hopefully, I will actually be doing that piece maybe next semester. We'll see. But yeah, other than that, we'll go on to Piazzolla. Piazzolla, the Argentine flair, um, born in 1921 in Mar del Plata, Argentina, and he was there for a while, and then his parents moved to New York, and this is where he learned his famous instrument. Oh God, hopefully I can say it. The bandoneon, and so he learned the famous tango instrument in New York City, and he was able to work in the tango clubs around the city, and was able to meet tango musician and band leader Carlos Gardel, and worked with Bella Bella Wilda, excuse me, who was a student of Rachmaninoff. So Gardel gave him the ins and outs of the tango style and how to work as a tango musician, and then Bill Waddell Wilda, excuse me, jeez, um, taught him the ins and outs of music and how it works. And so he went back to Argentina and he went back to Argentina in 1941 and continued to work there, and was able to work with Alberto Ginastera. And no doubt at this point, Piazzolla was looking towards the classical music composing. And in 1954, he was able to get a government grant to go study in France, in Paris, at the conservatory to study with Nadia. I'm gonna butcher her name and pardon my French. Nadia Boulanger, and so they worked together. But he approached her as a classical musician composer, instead of the tango worker that he really is, the tango musician that he is. And he never revealed this to her until after his classical compositions were not going anywhere, until Boulanger, she was able to hear his tangos, and then they both realized at that point that his destiny was not to compose classical music, but to redefine the tango as a music genre. And I always say this, but in Argentina, there's a saying that everything may change, but the tango does not. And so this was a big undertaking that he had. I mean, the whole country's national dance is the tango. And to change anything with it, was a big no-no. And so when he went back to Argentina in 1955, he formed his tango group called Octeto Buenos Aires. And a traditional tango band, has 6 instruments, so 2 violins, 2 bandoneons, a piano, and a double bass. Well, and then sometimes they have a flute player who plays the melody, or singer. So Piazzolla added an electric guitar and a cello in the group. So that's a little bit crazy. And so he wanted to make the tango more serious, more of a serious listen instead of dance music. And so this was not that popular. It wasn't very, he couldn't make money off of that, at least at the moment. So the octeto never succeeded in that. But the great thing was that during this time, from 1947 to 1960, the Vivaldi Four Seasons had recaught the imagination of the United States and all of Europe. And people had started to really look into the genius of Vivaldi in the Four Seasons. And during this time, Piazzolla was able to hear the Four Seasons and decided to write his own quintet arrangement of the Four Seasons in tango form, in the style of the tango. And so this is where we get the Four Seasons of Buenos Aires. And he takes a lot of inspiration from Vivaldi, but the funny part is that in January, that's when Argentine summers are, in January. So he takes some of the elements of the winter theme from Vivaldi, but puts it in the summer category. So and then he does the opposite, where in the winter time, in the winter, there's some summer elements in there, because the way, because Argentine's below the equator, so that things are very different there. And the compare and contrast. And so the first movement of this was written in 1965 and was made real popular in 1965. And so, but then Piazzolla in 1969 wrote Autumn, and then finished it in 1970 with Spring and Winter. And so this is what he called all this to say that Piazzolla wanted to make a new genre of tango called Nuevo Tango. And this is new tango. And so this new tango started to catch fire, but really people were not, at least catch fire around the world, but Argentines didn't really like it that much. It wasn't until later, after he died and become a national figure of Argentina, that people really started to look at it and go, this is it. This is our style. This is ours. It's always after somebody dies and the people around go, okay, that's ours. That we'll take it, but not when he was alive. But the Four Seasons of Buenos Aires is definitely something to talk about, because it's like it's an amazing piece that was written for string quintet and then arranged for violin soloists and orchestra, almost like Vivaldi. Well, not almost, exactly like Vivaldi. It became a Russian wrote it into kind of a concerto with orchestra. So that's always fun to listen to and play. So hopefully one of these days I will be able to do that, and I hope it will be soon. But now for the last and final work of the ninth, per se, we'll say that, is the Beethoven Septet in E flat major. So Beethoven, we all know a lot about Beethoven. Very prideful in what he does and what he's work. I mean, rightly so. And so 1799, this piece was composed, and the Septet was commissioned by Prince Schwarzenberg, excuse me, and he was the same guy who commissioned, or that the quintet for piano and winds was dedicated for. And it was so good in private. This was a private concert. It was so good in the private concert that it was premiered publicly and dedicated to the Empress Maria Theresa, excuse me. It was dedicated to her, and the success was so immediate that it caused a huge mass desire and want for this piece to be published, for the general public to be able to look at and perform. And it caused Beethoven to maybe oversell, and the demand for it came in like wildfire. And so other than that, it's probably one of Beethoven's most popular chamber works. It's definitely the most popular work in the 18th century. Excuse me, in the 19th century. Excuse me. And so he in his later life, he was not very happy about that. He was very much irritated about that, because he was he was much older, and he had defined himself and was like, how could this piece that I wrote in my younger years be more popular than all my other stuff. And he was very irritated about that. But other than that, this piece has 6 movements. Um, it it goes a lot off of Mozart models, and so his variations and serenades and divertimentos, they're very much in the spirit of Mozart. The first movement is in allegro form. Kind of starts off like a Haydn work. It's in adagio. It's a slow opening, and then it goes into allegro, and then it follows a very traditional sonata form, more or less. And he there's some say that there's similarities with the theme with his string quartet in C minor, the Opus 18, and he takes in some of the movements he takes a lot inspiration or borrows a lot of themes from his other pieces. Like in the second movement, uh, some say that the piano sonata, the Opus 22 piano sonata, that uh, the theme follows the theme of that work, of the slow movement of that work, and it the sound quality between the winds and the strings give it a very open ease feeling, and I could see why people like that so much, especially with Beethoven. Beethoven being freaking serious and all that. And the theme of the minuet is pretty much taken from the piano sonata in G major, um, piano sonata in G major, Opus 49, number 2, and this was the most popular movement of Beethoven's day, no doubt. And it it's pretty much the string dominate the minuet, and then in the trio, the clarinet, and the horn take over. And then jumping down to the last movement. So the last movement very much starts out like the beginning. There's a slow opening, and it's more of this funeral opening, very much like a funeral type tune, and then all of a sudden it jumps into a major presto, and it goes into the minor mode, but it ends in major. But then the violinist kind of like takes over in this movement, and there's like a violin concerto type cadenza at the end before this whole piece wraps up. So it's a very nice work, and it's very much kind of an outdoors ish piece. So it's for outdoor entertainment, not very much home, private entertainment per se, like in the salons back in the day. But it's more of an outdoor entertainment type thing. You're sitting around, people are talking, people are not paying attention, they're not really paying attention to you, but they might hear something very nice every once in a while, be like, wow, they hear the minuet and how things change. They're like, wow, this is amazing. So these are the works that I would love to do in the future, and that I'm going to push to do, because as a bass player, we have to get lucky to do something other than the Trout, or something other than the Trout, or any Schubert chamber work for that matter. But in the future, I'll be definitely pushing and longing to do these works. So I hope you enjoyed watching this, and I hope you guys all have a good winter break, and I hope I can go back into my hole now. So we'll talk soon, and we'll see you later. Bye-bye.